Indominus Rex Alpha is a 2 green, 2 black or blue hybrid, and 1 for a 6/6 dinosaur mutant that says, as Indominus Rex Alpha enters the battlefield, discard any number of creature cards. It enters with a flying counter on it if a card discarded this way has flying. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Haste, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. And when Indominus Rex enters the battlefield, draw a card for each counter on it. As you're playing this onto the battlefield, you're discarding cards into the graveyard that you can resurrect later, and you're giving counters to Indominus Rex to just throw these surprise punches at your opponents and just take off chunks of their life total that count as commander damage. And this is just one way to build dinosaurs. I want to go over that deck and 2 other options for you, because there are 3 ways to build most commander decks: strong, fun, and mean. Let's take a look at the strong, fun, and mean ways that I would build dinosaurs in Commander.
Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat.
Before we jump into this, my goal is to put out one of these 3 ways to build Commander deck techs every Saturday this year. So if you're new to the channel or you're returning and you've seen 2 or 3 of our videos, hit that subscribe button to keep me honest, and let me know in the comments what commander or theme you want to see in a video like this, and I'll try to get to it. Huge thanks to our channel sponsors: Card Conduit, best place to sell your cards; TCG Player, best place to buy your cards; Dragon Shield, best way to protect your cards; and Moxfield, best place to list your cards on the internet. So when somebody goes, "Hey, have you got a deck list?" you can be like, "Here's the Moxfield link." With dinosaurs, you could focus on the tribe and play a lot of dinosaurs in your deck, and we've got a deck like that in this video. Or you can pick a dinosaur to be your commander and focus on beating your opponents with a giant, crazy powerful dinosaur, and that's the version that Indominus Rex presents to us. You play the dinosaur mutant, you discard creature cards to give Indominus Rex a great suite of abilities, and you refill your hand for every counter that's going on to Indominus Rex, so that you keep having juice in your hand to play onto the battlefield. Now, with those creature cards that we're going to throw into the graveyard, we're going to do some resurrecting strategies. A lot of you, if you're familiar with the channel, know I love a good resurrection strategy, and that's what we're going to look at with Indominus Rex. Scavenged Brawler is a card that really represents keywords. This is the kind of creatures you're going to want to be looking for. Look at the keywords on this: flying, vigilance, trample, and lifelink. This is crazy. We are getting an excellent suite of abilities onto our 6/6 dinosaur here. Great avoidance. We're not going to have to tap to attack. We're just going to trample over if they just chump block it, and we're going to be gaining life on the swing. This is just an example of the kinds of creatures that you want to look for to put into this deck, because you want to try and hit as many great keywords as we possibly can. Flying, Death Touch, Hexproof. You see, these are the kind of cards that we want to look for, just like Nightveil Predator. This isn't the kind of card that you're going to be like, oh, I love to play this in Commander, but with Indominus Rex, it is a card we want to throw into the graveyard when we cast our Commander, so that Hexproof, Flying, Death Touch, all on our 6/6. Yeah, that's an excellent, excellent suite of abilities. Also, aim it indestructible. Look at the god type creatures. A lot of these creature types have indestructible on them. Rhonas also just happens to have Death Touch as well, and could be an excellent board threat itself, more than just like Nightveil, where you just want to really toss that and get those counters onto Indominus Rex. Now, you want to have something that's going to allow you to access everything you're throwing into your graveyard, and I really like the newer card, Virtue of Persistence. It's a removal spell early on, -3/-3, gets around indestructible, kills a lot of threats. You're gaining a little life back, but later you get to cast this from exile. It's not in your hand, so it's not taking up resource space, or can be targeted and gotten rid of before you choose to cast it. Virtue of Persistence is just going to sit there and say, hey, whenever you're ready to go, at the beginning of your upkeep, I'm going to allow you to put a creature card from a graveyard, any graveyard, a graveyard, onto the battlefield under your control. Obviously, we'll have a lot of stuff in our graveyard that we can bring back, but we also may be able to target big threats from our opponent's graveyards. So Reanimator, that's what's going to be a lasting version of what's going to keep us in games over the long term, because we've got sort of a lightning rod of a commander with Indominus Rex, and we want to make sure that we can close out a game if we've just been absolutely hosed and targeted down. Shadow of the Grave has a special place in this deck. It says, return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that you cycled or discarded this turn. So you can really get some sweet combo-y stuff going. Play Indominus Rex, pitch a bunch of creatures, draw cards, play Shadow of the Grave, get those cards back, and pass, and you're ready to go again if Indominus Rex gets answered, or you just want to play what you were going to pitch into the graveyard and reanimate something later down the line. I just love how this card plays specifically in this deck. Also really like Essence Flux in this deck. Because we have blue in the color identity of our commander, we've got an interesting option here with Essence Flux. It says exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it's a spirit, put a +1/+1 counter on it. We don't care about that last line of text, but for 1 blue mana at instant speed, we can save our Indominus Rex, or we can reset our Indominus Rex and give it a new suite of abilities. Indominus says enters the battlefield, and you're pitching the cards, and then for every counter you draw a card. So Essence Flux, if you just don't like the abilities that you've got on it, you were forced to play it in a situation where it wasn't ideal. Now you've got the right cards in your hand. You've drawn, Death Touch, Hexproof on creature cards. You can Essence Flux it, and when it re-enters the battlefield, you're going to get to pitch those cards and give it a new suite of abilities. Now, this will also get you around targeted removal. If you're not able to get Hexproof on it early on in your first 1 or 2 casts of the Rex, then Essence Flux is going to allow you to dodge that, timely removal, that go for the throat that they're going to try and cast against your Dinosaur. You Essence Flux it, it blinks out, blinks back in, give it abilities, draw some cards, their spell fizzles, and we keep going. Nice little avoidance tech, and there's different ways of doing this and different ways of taking advantage of an ETB on a commander, but I wanted to mention that as a nice little 1 mana option. I also love Mandate of Abaddon in this one, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. A black and 3 for a sorcery says choose target creature you control, destroy all creatures with power less than that creature's power. With this deck, we are very focused on our commander. It comes with a 6 power. There's not a ton of creatures in commander that are 6 power or higher. And so when we cast Mandate, especially if we've put any extra counters, +1 counters on our Indominus Rex, Mandate's going to wipe the board for us, leaving our commander there ready to attack, get through, hopefully deal lethal damage as a way of finishing the game off. Ozolith. This is such a no-brainer in this deck. When a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. So the Ozolith doesn't care if it's a +1 counter, if it's a trample counter, death touch, hexproof, whatever. Ozolith says, go ahead and drop those here. I'll keep the charge, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if there are any counters on me, you can move those to whatever creature you want. So every single time it goes away, we're getting the counters on Ozolith. Every time our Rex goes away, we get the counters on Ozolith. Rex comes back with different abilities. We shift the previous abilities onto it. Any +1 counters we're able to do in this, Ozolith becomes a powerhouse. This becomes a must answer for our opponents. For the fun way to build dinosaurs, let's go with Pantlaza here. Pantlaza, Sun Favored, was the precon commander from Ixalan having to do with dinosaurs, and it is powerful, let me tell you what. This is a deck that wants you to play a lot of dinosaurs in the 99, flood the battlefield with dinosaurs, attack your opponents down with dinosaurs, and win with dinosaurs. You get what I'm getting at? This is the deck where you want a lot of dinos and not just one big dino. You have found it. Pantlaza, Sun Favored, or another dinosaur entering the battlefield under your control. You discover X, where X is that creature's toughness, and it only happens once per turn. Exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with that mana value or less. So with Pantlaza entering the battlefield, we would discover 4. We would look at the top of our library until we exile a non-land card with mana value 4 or less. We can either cast it for free or put it into our hand if it's something that we don't want to cast right then. It is so powerful. This is the way I would go if we were just wanting to swarm the battlefield with dinosaurs. Now, it's funny, we're going to start with a human druid here. I just talked a bunch of crap about dinosaurs. Now we're going to start with a human druid. It's a mana rock, y'all, and you need mana rocks in this deck because you're going to have a lot of 5, 6, 7+ mana value creatures and cards that you want to play, so you need to make sure you get there. Intrepid Paleontologist lets you do that, but also has upside for dinosaur stuff. Paying 2, you can exile target card from a graveyard, and Intrepid Paleontologist says you can cast dinosaur creature spells from among cards you own, exiled with Intrepid Paleontologist. If you cast a spell this way, that creature enters the battlefield with a finality counter on it, meaning it gets exiled, so you can't just do this over and over again, returning a dinosaur, the same dinosaur that keeps dying over and over. You're recasting it, won't allow you to do that. But you want to not only look in the type line for Dinosaur, you want to look in the Oracle text, meaning everything in that text box from creature, human, druid down to the 2/2. Make sure that you are searching for cards that also have Dinosaur on them there. I wanted to use this as an example of great cards that have tangential value for your Dinosaur deck that may not come up in a search of just Dinosaurs. Now, along the lines of a mana dork, let's have a cost reducer. Marauding Raptor is a 2-mana 2/3 dino that says creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Also says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Marauding Raptor deals 2 damage to it. So you want to kind of play around with that, but Dinosaurs, we're going to have a lot of toughnesses that are 3+, and that's going to make Raptor unable to kill them, hopefully. If a Dinosaur is dealt damage this way, Marauding Raptor gets +2/+0 until end of turn. We don't care so much about the rest of that. That's great if we get some value off and we can send our Raptor in with a high, power that's been pumped up from us casting a couple of Dinosaurs and them surviving. But I really love the cost reduction on this. Extra points on this one because there are a lot of Dinosaurs that say Enrage, which is when they're dealt damage, you get a cool effect. And a lot of times it's not that simple to get damage dealt to them without killing them. Marauding Raptor is a way to make that happen, so you can look for some crossover there. The Jurassic World crossover, Universes Beyond, really brought us some fantastic, unique Dinosaur cards. Hunting Velociraptor is one of them. Number one, I love how this is blending in with the background of this video. This looks dope with this background, but Hunting Velo, 3 mana for a 3/2 dino with first strike. It says Dinosaur spells you cast have Prowl for a red and 2. You may cast a spell for its Prowl cost if you deal combat damage to a player this turn with a creature with any of its creature types. We've attacked, we've gotten through, some of our Dinosaurs have dealt damage. That means that any of our very expensive Dinosaurs, 7+ CMC Dinosaurs, are now able to be cast for a red and 2. If you're keeping score at home, that is very good. Rhythm of the Wild, fantastic enchantment in this deck. Let's keep the pressure on and let's stay out of the line of sight of the control deck. Creature spells you control can't be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot, meaning they either get a +1/+1 counter they enter or haste. Haste is the enabler here. If we don't need haste for whatever reason, you can drop a +1 counter on there, but the extra value of our creatures being unable to be countered, yes, this is an enchantment that I want to play in here. Instant speed stuff that I want to play in here. We need to keep our hand full. We want to be playing our Dinosaurs onto the battlefield and attacking. That is our strategy here. So we need to keep our hand full of resources so that we can continually rebuild after board wipes. Return to the Wildspeaker is going to help us do that, because draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. We've got some powerful dinos in here. Instant speed, 5 mana, draw 4 off our commander, not bad. Then we can also choose to have non-human creatures we control get +3/+3 until end of turn. 1 big swing, 1 final attack. Return to the Wildspeaker makes blocking completely redundant because all of our stuff is doing a ton of damage. Really good instant speed spell to come in here. It's super cheap, comes in a lot of the precons. Not as cheap, but also affordable, is still fantastic. Chandra's Ignition, 5 mana sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. A lot like the Indominus Rex board wipe that I suggested, this one keeps your biggest dinosaur ready to roll. Have that dinosaur kill every other creature and deal the damage residually to opponents as well, and then attack. This is the kind of board wipe that you want to be running in this deck. I also love this card, Savage Order, another card from the crossover that's kind of a no-brainer include. 2 green, 2 other for a sorcery. Additional cost to cast it, you got to sack a creature with power 4 or greater. Luckily, our commander fits the bill. Search your library for a dinosaur creature card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle it. Gains indestructible until your next turn. That's just insane. There are so many fantastic options for dinosaurs that if you can get them straight onto the battlefield for 4 mana and sacrificing our commander, because just saying that because we can always depend on it, that will be brutal to your opponent's game plans. This is a fantastic card and really necessary in the dinosaur deck, I think. And then Regisaur Alpha. This is just a reminder to look for kindred cards. Make sure that you are playing choose a creature type cards, stuff like that. Regisaur Alpha comes in, says other dinosaurs you control have haste, and when it ETBs, you create a 3/3 with trample. So you go wide and you're giving everything haste. That other dinosaurs you control have haste. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, whatever it is. When you've chosen all of the dinosaurs that are going to go in your deck, make sure that's some anthem type stuff that's going to help your entire line benefit, like Regisaur Alpha. Make sure that stuff's in your 99. Third way to build dinosaurs, we're back to one big mean dino, and that's Etali, Primal Conqueror. This is the mean way to do it, y'all. All in mana ramp, Etali Primal Conqueror as quickly as you possibly can. Make copies of it if you can. This card just gets absolutely bonkers. 7 mana, 7/7 Elder Dinosaur with Trample. It says when it ETBs, you can blink this. Each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among the non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. Wow. 4 free spells. That includes you, each player. You and all of the opponents. If you got a full pod going, 4 free spells. Wow. That's really all you need to know with this commander, and that's going to be our entire game plan. But do know that you can transform Etali into an absolute murder machine that can one-shot all of your opponents. But that's just if you need a backup plan. You know what I'm saying? Let's look at cards like Jeweled Lotus. You know what this card represents? Ramp. You need to have this in there. We want to burn through the CMC of our commander as quickly as possible and start getting that overwhelming value as soon as we can. Delightful Halfling. This is almost a necessary include in any sort of Voltron-y sprint all-in commander-based strategies, because spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell, and that spell can't be countered. For 1 green, you get a 1/2 Halfling Citizen that can tap for colorless or a mana of any color to be spent on legendary spells, and then they can't be countered. That's pretty sweet when our Etali is real big, real expensive, and we don't want it to be countered. My point is, make sure you got some ramp in your deck. You can also come at it from the other direction and have cost reducers. Goblin and Archomancer, 2 mana for a 2/2 Goblin Shaman. Each spell you cast that's red or green costs 1 less to cast. Perfect. Reduces the cost of our commander overall as we're also ramping. Nature's Lore. I'm telling you, we're all in on this. You can ramp with Mana Dorks. You can ramp with Mana Rocks. You can ramp with creatures that reduce costs. You can ramp with ramp spells. Do this one. I really love Nature's Lore because it says a forest card. If you're newer, the distinction here is typically cards like this search for a basic land. This one searches for a forest. So if a land has that type forest in the type line, you can go and get that one. And so it lets you get lands that tap for more than just one color, which can be helpful if you're trying to get that, you know, extra red pip because you need to cast Etali, etc. For some reason you've ramped out to all green. Nature's Lore will help you go get something that'll also tap for red and help keep you in the game. But look, that's enough ramp. We know all the ways we can ramp. Rocks, dorks, reduction, go get the lands themselves. Let's get crazy with it and play Flame Shadow Conjuring. 4 mana enchantment that says whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 red. Just 1 red for when a non-token creature ETBs. If you do create a token that's a copy of that creature, for 1 red, you get 4 more free spells. It's good for the economy. Helps everybody. It hurts no one. That token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. That doesn't matter because we're going to have to sacrifice the Etali token or our main one, but probably we just want to sacrifice the token. Yeah, probably just want to sack the token most times. And so we are going, but before it goes away, we still get the enters the battlefield, and that is the part that makes Flame Shadow Conjuring a must run in this deck. Conjurer's Closet, same thing, except we're going to do it at EOT for free every turn. 5 mana artifact. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Wow, Etali's ability just looks worse and worse when we are smashing it. Hellkite Courser, 6 mana, 6/5 dragon flying. When it ETBs, you can put a commander you own from the command zone onto the battlefield, and it gains haste. Return it to the command zone at the beginning of the next end step. So you're only going to get it for a turn. Yes, the tax is going to go up, but 6 mana, we get another push out there. What if you draw this late? You've already cast Etali twice. For some reason, you haven't won the game already. Hellkite Courser drops 6 mana. Here's another activation of it. That ETBs, by the way, if we've got Flame Shadow Conjuring on the battlefield, we can pay a red on top of the Hellkite Courser 6 mana that we spent, get an extra copy of Etali. Now we've gotten 8 free spells. The degeneracy of this one, this is the meanest. This is just such the meanest way to build it. And this is the meanest art my eyes have ever laid. I can't even think about it. Now Fishni. 6 mana, 4/6, Beast Demon Flyer. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. If it's a permanent spell, the copy gains haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sack this permanent. When Nalfeshni sees Etali enter the battlefield and cast 4 spells from exile, all of those spells cast from exile can get copied. So one trigger of Etali's enter the battlefield ability with Nalfeshni on the battlefield can result in 8 spells. Instead of all this blinking stuff I was talking about, let's just copy the 4 that we get. Ridiculous. This deck is nuts. Check that pinned comment for a couple of links that'll be super helpful to you. There's a couple of deck lists down there that you can look at for inspiration. There's a list to buy all these cards on TCG Player. Super simple, one click, and if you buy it through that link, it helps the channel at no extra cost to you. While you're down there in the comments, like I said, let me know what commander or strategy or creature type or something you want to see in a 3 ways to build video, and I'll try to get to it. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.